Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Let's start with singing. Gosh, there aren't many of us in here yet, so let's get them all in here with our singing. This little light of mine, where I invite you to rise in body or spirit. It's okay to clap. It's okay to dance in the aisles if you want to. Here we go, and this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go,
Good morning. It's kind of cloudy. Could we do a little better than that? Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. I'd like to welcome you to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. We are so glad to have you, and I want to just take a moment and thank the people that send in pictures for us. Isn't that wonderful to be able to see all the things that happened during the week? And special thanks today to Linda Elsden, who did the pictures of our Blessing of the Animals. For those of you who might be visiting us for the first time or after a couple times, maybe the first time in person after being online, welcome. We're so glad you're with us. We hope that all visitors will fill out a visitor card through the website or in our umbrella table over in the Morton Hall after the service. And we are glad to welcome you and answer any questions you will have. And we have a series of classes that you can watch for called Connecting You and UU and MDUUC. That's a lot of U's, I know. But so you can look for those if you want to learn more about us. And on the first Sunday of every month, we have an opportunity for those who are willing to add their energy to ours through the act of joining as a member. They can do that after the service, or you can see a board member or speak to someone most days, probably not today, but most days after the service. Our congregation has so many ways to connect, and I want to mention particularly a couple things. One is our justice programming postcards and letters are going at great guns, and Reverend Rodney says there's a new batch that will be available after the service. So thank you for all of you who have been helping to rally voter registration, voter action during this time. And so please see those at the justice table after the service. We also have our middle school students who have started to provide refreshments, and starting last week, we started also having coffee, which some people had requested. Yes, exactly. So yeah, thank you. To make this work, though, we need to actually partake in these refreshments. And they are now located down on the patio, the brick patio, which was so beautifully refurbished just a year ago. So please join us, and today, because we have our congregational forum, you'll get to quickly go down there, support the middle school students, get refreshed, and come back in for our congregational forum. So that will be your deal today. So we are really grateful to have you here, and we ask that anybody who would like to have a listening ear contact our ministerial team if you're in need of that, special care or financial support. Asking is a gift you give our community, and welcome to this beloved community.
Good morning. My name is Janice Davis, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are she and hers. Every week we read something about our congregation. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community, and we begin by reading here. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. This community exists because of the time, talent, and treasure that our members and friends share. Please talk to any board member or minister about how you can connect and contribute. We are so glad to have you with us, and we hope you are keeping safe. Here are a few announcements. While we are no longer checking vaccination statuses, our expectation is that those of you who are inside are vaccinated. Thank you for honoring this commitment to keep one another safe. And check out the just-in-time section in the Friday email for one-time ways that we can contribute. We will have a congregational meeting also today.
Congregational
Forum. Not meeting, forum. Let's read this correctly here. It says next week. That was what threw me off, but it is actually today, October 16th. It's in a hybrid format, and we want you to be there as Reverend Leslie said, we will be talking about financial sustainability, the eighth principle, and much more. It will be held at noon, and you can be here in the sanctuary or use the Zoom link, which is on the calendar, which has been emailed to all on our lists. You can contribute your time to benefit our wonderful community by reaching out, stepping up. Our amazing annual services auction, the Bid for Love, is coming up in November. It's always the first Saturday of November, and this year it is November 5th. Fun, food, a chance to support this wonderful congregation. And welcome. It's good to be together.
Okay, so today is, in fact, our amazing Bid for Love sermon, that the topic for which was chosen by our Bid for Love sermon winner last year, Sharon Solstice, who you'll hear from later today. Sharon wanted us to focus on all the different confusing things about the emotion of pride. But today, as we welcome each other, let's do it in a positive way and say, "Good morning, I'm proud to get to see you." We are going to sing our invocation, and we're going to begin to learn as a congregation some hand motions that go with this. So I'm going to invite you to rise in body or spirit for this, because it'll be a little easier to do if you can do that.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh, in the
I'm Michelle Paquette, and this is Lori Wickwire, my wife. Our chalice reading today is words by Melanie Davis. Under the right circumstances, playing with fire is a delight. Imagine being gathered around a fire pit as the crackling flames invite us to sing, dance, and roast a marshmallow or two. Our chalice also invites us to play, although with ideas rather than with marshmallows. The flame encourages us to explore who we are, who our neighbors are, and where we are on our spiritual journeys. Today, we light this chalice in the spirit of play. Let us trust the light to guide us in this hour and in the days to come, finding joy along the way.
It is wonderful to have Michelle and Lori visiting us. They are on our stream a lot, but it's wonderful to see them in person. I'm going to invite our those who are young in age or in spirit to come forward at this time for our Time for All Ages. Here we go. Great. Good job, everyone. It's a little sleepy today. We can all be feeling a little bit sleepy. Tired, yes. Anyone else feeling a little sleepy today? That's why you need to go visit the middle school students and get some coffee and tea afterward, right? All right. So we're going to talk today at the service, as I just said, about pride and about feeling proud, and also the difference between feeling proud. Anyone feel proud this week about anything? Anyone out there? Come on, we're waking you up here. There we go. The difference between feeling proud and the difference of feeling prideful. So now proud we think of in kind of a positive way, and prideful we sort of think, there could be some problems there, right? So we're going to be thinking about the difference today between when you did something good that you had to work for, you felt really good about yourself for doing, or sometime when perhaps you did something that was more about feeling like you had power over someone else, or that you were standing out as just yourself. So that's something that we would call prideful. So Reverend Rodney and I are going to ask a series of questions, so don't get too comfortable down there, because it's going to be about situations, and we're going to ask you to choose between feeling pride and, there we go, there's pride, there's proud up there on the screen, but it's going to be on this side, and prideful. We got the king, the guy's got wearing a crown, looking in a mirror. Might remind us of people, but anyway, so that's what we're going to choose. So so we're going to actually ask you to think about this. And if you're watching us, if you're in the sanctuary and you're not up here in the front, you get to point to pride. I'm pride. Oh, pride over here. Proud over here, and you're prideful. Right. So you get to point which one you want to point at. And if you're at home, put your answer in the YouTube. Okay? If you can do that. So that's how we'll get our online folks to help. All right. Rodney's got our first question.
Okay, here we go. Your favorite aunt tells you that a picture you drew made her smile. Do you feel self-loving pride about that, or power over prideful?
If you guys want to actually
Or somewhere
move
in
up,
between.
you can come over here. Yeah, if you touch,
So
so
prideful
they can
is over
see
here.
you what you're choosing.
So basically, do I feel happy, like, that she praised me, or do I feel happy that I got attention?
Yeah. you
Yep,
got
that's
it.
exactly. That's one way to think about it. You can
exactly
think. People think about it in different ways. That's why it's such an interesting topic. Okay, great. So you can also be somewhere in between. So with some of these,
This is prideful, right?
that's
I'm
prideful over
prideful.
there.
Oh, yeah, then I'd be proud.
Okay, good. Well, here's the second one. That's great. I'm glad. I've got a lot of attention over here. But you bake cookies for your mom after she had a bad day, and she tells you that they made her feel happier. Okay, everyone's going to stay over. And we're pointing? Are we pointing? Are we pointing? Okay, thank you so much. All right, Rodney.
You win a contest with only one winner and 3 other people you know entered.
Yeah, Ben's thinking about moving. Yeah, there's some movement there. It's good. Yeah. All right, here's the next one. That was good. We got a little movement there. Because now people are thinking about it. It's getting a little bit more muddy, isn't it? You win a race after training for it for months. They're all coming back over.
You win a race because the other top competitors dropped out.
Your mom finally learns how to post something in the chat after you tried to teach her 3 times. Oh, I don't know. Some of you could be proud for that, I think. You succeeded.
You speak up for yourself against a bully for the very first time.
You make a secret delivery of flowers to a neighbor's house, and you hear them telling someone else that the flowers really cheered them up. Yeah? Come on, you out there. You got to be voting out there.
Your babysitter tells you that she likes you better than your sibling.
You are a peacock, and you feel proud of being so beautiful. Who knows? Yeah, it's hard to tell. Okay.
So sometimes it is very hard to tell the difference between the kind of pride that helps us be who we are and claim our true gifts, and the kind that, well, where it seems more like we're bragging about stuff. And neither do we want to be proud, neither of those do we want to be proud of what we are doing. So, guess what's under this basket? There's a basket here. Take a guess. Air.
All right.
Chalice.
All right. A light. That was a good guess. So we just sang that hymn, This Little Light of Mine. So Ben, would you mind lifting that up? And there is a light. So one thing we know about pride is that we don't want to leave our light under the bushel, right, under the basket. So we also don't want to use our light like a floodlight. Thank you, that's perfect. Drowning out all other lights. So that is the puzzlement about pride, how to tell when you are doing it. But we wanted to do it together because sometimes talking to others and conferring really helps. So that's about it. Thank you all for being such good participants. We will now sing our children out to their classes. Thank you.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness that you learn guide your hearts till you return.
God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Christian Scriptures, James 4:6. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. Perhaps one of these famous quotes resonates with you, or not. Pride is, after all, a complicated and probably very familiar emotion. In the field of psychology, many see a relationship between shame and pride, sometimes referring to pride as the opposite side of the shame coin. Now, shame and me are best of friends. I am all too familiar with her. Only now, after years of therapy, does she only lightly whisper instead of screaming at me as I sip my morning coffee, trying to tell me that I might just not be good enough or loved enough. Am I the only one that has that conversation? Oh, well. But my relationship with pride is a lot more recent and very intentional. Having been raised Southern Baptist, pride was not something that I was taught to have or embrace. It was kept at arm's length, and when it showed up, some of the various scripture verses that I just read above were used often to dampen it and to make sure I wasn't getting too big for my britches. However, I think that perhaps my family confounded vanity and pride. Psychological research seems to converge on the separation of pride as an intrinsically sourced emotion focused on how we feel about ourselves, while vanity is more extrinsically motivated and has to do with how we think we are perceived by others. I believe that there's a quote from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice that really says it best. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what we would have others think of us. I've been able to find pride in my own understanding of myself through direct involvement in the queer community and attending and celebrating years now of gay pride events all around the world. A discussion with Reverend Leslie earlier this week got us thinking about the origins of that word and its use in gay pride circles. Now, it probably won't shock all of you to realize that historians seem to agree that the particularly pervasive, shame-filled, anchored in moral decency kind of homophobia points to the Catholic Church in the medieval times as the origin of that special kind of hate. Prior to that, the LGBT community could be found in almost every human gathering on all populated continents. In fact, there's clear anthropological evidence that the shame-centered brand of homo and trans phobia only found their way, for example, to African and indigenous communities through the mechanism of colonization and Christian proselytizing. The United States did not escape the British beliefs of homo and transphobia that permeated the world through colonization either. In fact, our own association struggled with the inclusion of queer people in their congregations and clerical roles. I know that's shocking. A survey of the UUA in 1967, for example, showed at that time that only 0.1% of our faith movement believed that homosexuality should be encouraged, while 80% of those polled felt it should be discouraged through education. And while progress has been made, conversations with any of our trans siblings will tell you that we still have a lot of work to do. As I said before, many psychologists see pride as the antidote to shame. So it makes total sense why, when faced with intense, shame-filled homophobia, the gay community came together and began using the word pride to label their public celebrations of self. If you've been to a pride parade, you know that it's quite celebratory, placing many aspects of queer culture on display in positive lights. I've been to so many pride events all over the place, and all of them that I attended anchored themselves on pride, lifting up our hearts and minds of those who are participating, often, many of us, still clouded in deep self-shame. I should mention, though, that one of the critiques among many of the pride events is that, at least here stateside, they can lack racial and ethnic diversity present in the greater queer community. As a white cis gay man, it's no surprise that I always felt comfortable and uplifted at these events. I also completely understand why those who don't fit my demographic sometimes struggle in these places. I hope that my community in the future can work to make those events more inclusive. I hope this for this congregation as well, because shame knows no race, no creed, nor ethnicity. She's happy to pull up a seat to anyone's table and whisper words of loathing to all of us. So as we gather this morning, may we cultivate pride, not vanity, in our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing our opening song. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to know blessed to my soul.
Now we come to the time of our service where we lift up and share those joys and sorrows in our lives that are too great for any of us to hold alone. So those of you who have signed or written in the book, Ron Onan wants to share a candle of concern for my father-in-law today, Jose Canestrano, who is likely in the last weeks of his earthly life. Angela is with him in Brazil. Thank you for positive energy, thoughts, and prayers. I'm asking Reverend Leslie to light a candle on behalf of Kathy Herrick, who is in a care facility recuperating from a recent fall and would love to receive cards. We also have a number of candles of joy for the birthdays of 90 plus in September. I have the permission to share the name and the ages, so I'm not giving away secrets. The first candle is for Ellen Dorfer, who will be turning 90 on September 20th. The next candle is for Gwen Longosh, who will turn 93 on September 30th. And the last is for Joy Hicks, who turned 94 on September 7th. I'm asking for a candle of concern to be lit for Alex Castle, who is now at Manor Care. And Kathy Gonzalez asked us to light a candle to remind us that this year we honor Patricia Gonzalez at the Tree of Lights with the symbolism of the light and a reading of her name, and that is at Pleasant Hill on November 9th at 5:30. And it's hybrid, in person and virtual. We also would like to light a community candle of concern for one of our members who is in need of some assistance with cat care in Concord after having an unplanned medical issue. So please see me or Reverend Leslie after the service if that is something that you are capable of providing. And now I ask Reverend Leslie to light two final candles, the first representing all of the joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts. And the second candle, one that reminds us that we are the peace and justice makers for this one imperfect but healing world.
So now let's sing together our meditation. May nothing evil cross this door. May nothing evil cross this door, and long will fortune never pry about these windows. May the Lord and rain go by.
And I invite you to join me in the spirit of reflection and meditation this morning, and that deep ask of our heart that we know as prayer. And as we contemplate this topic set so well before us, it's really a topic that at some level we have to contemplate within our own hearts. And it is also a topic that contemplation within our own hearts is best done within the larger embrace of community. So as Brett plays this next beautiful offering, we'll have some questions on the screen for you to reflect on, and I invite you to take into your own heart your own personal journey through the puzzlements of pride. So let us take into the collective embrace of this loving community our gratitude for those parts of our life which make us feel proud, and let us also be grateful for the opportunity to be with others when we face that inevitable part of human nature that none of us are perfect, that all of us are works in progress, and that we can hold together those elements of vanity and hubris that perhaps we detect in the corners of our hearts. All of this we hold together, and that is a blessing.
Well, that was amazing. Good morning, I'm Ron and my pronouns are he and him, and I serve on your board of trustees. With our daily lives being as busy as they are, it's great to slow down every now and then, just to take a deep breath and to take stock of where we are. And I was able to do that last weekend with a handful of other members from the church on an overnight wilderness camping adventure in the Sierras. We drove up to the trailhead, but from there it was a 2.5-mile hike to the campsite, carrying everything on our backs: food, water, tents, and sleeping bags. We were out of cell range for 2 days, and I don't remember the last time that I could say that. We were led by our own Peter Morse, an avid hiker and camping enthusiast, and all the others had some sort of experience with this sort of thing, but for me, it was the first time I had done this kind of camping since I was a Boy Scout back in Wisconsin, well, let's say several decades ago. You see, we have a camper now, and we have a microwave in it, and a refrigerator, and a DVD player, so we do something called glamping, glorified camping. It's like camping, but there's less dirt and more wine. But I can tell you this last weekend up in the Sierras was special on many levels. The scenery was awesome, amazing granite formations, cold, pristine lakes. One of the lakes had fish jumping out of it. The sunset was this ferocious orange blaze among the pine trees. And the stars were good, but there was a full moon, so we didn't have like those thousands of stars. But we did catch a few satellites as we all just gathered around on Saturday night and looked up at the sky and talked with each other. We shared stories of our lives, we told jokes, and we helped each other protect our food from the bears. For me, it really was a wonderful sharing and calm, and something I really needed to do to refresh my soul. I'm telling you about this because this was a Bid for Love event. Bid for Love, of course, being the biggest fundraiser that we have every year, and I am really grateful that my friend Peter offered it. He was able to give of his time and his talent as a wilderness camper to not only support the church financially, but to bring members together so that we could appreciate nature, we could share our lives for a weekend, and really enjoy each other's company. And the good news is that you can do this too. I don't mean lead a 2.5-mile hike into the forest. I encourage you to consider what talents that you have that you could bring people together in a special way that you can offer as an event for the Bid for Love to help support our community. There is still time to sign up. As you know, the Bid for Love will be November 5th. And you never know if you might up helping someone to refresh their soul. For today, I ask that you give financially as you are able, either here in the sanctuary or online. May the ushers come forward now to collect the offering. And now let us dedicate our offerings together with the words on the screen. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Hello. I'm Sharon Solstice. My pronouns are she and her. And I've been interested and confused by this emotion of pride for a few years, and I am delighted that finally I got to win it at the auction last November. And I especially want to say thank you to Leslie for offering us this gift every year, and encourage y'all to think about what service topic would you like, and do you want to bid on it on November 5th? I'm also wearing my hat as co-chair of the Bid for Love Committee. So I totally get feeling proud when I do something that challenges myself. I procrastinated for years building a new garden gate. And finally last spring it came to the point where I had to do it, either that or give up the garden. And I made this gate that I loved. And everybody I came in contact with for weeks afterwards had to look at pictures of my gate. And you can see me after the service. And in the service today, I'm thinking, well, was that pride? Like a good positive kind of pride, or was that vanity? But it was just pride. I didn't know I could build a gate that I would like. And it's got nothing to do with me being better or worse than anyone else. Many people can build better gates than I can, faster, with less angst. And then when I think about pride, I think, well, what about group identity? What about pride based on things that I had no agency in bringing about? Things that are a function of where and when I was born, who my parents are, things that would include ancestry, being a lesbian, being a member of Red Sox Nation. I know that I had nothing to do with the Red Sox winning the World Series in 2004. But I felt proud to be part of Red Sox Nation. I don't understand that. Whatever. And I know that if we identify with a group that is targeted or traumatized, we're much more likely to feel proud in being in part of that group. And what comes to mind to me, you know, as a white middle-class American, is the pride I felt for being an American on 9/11. Other groups that I might be affiliated with, though, I don't feel that rush of pride. Now, I had no idea that they were going to play Claire, who, in case there's any confusion about our last names, is my daughter. But I will say that the most proud I can remember ever feeling in my life, I was sitting about where you're sitting, and Claire played a beautiful piece for the congregation. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently, the feeling of just this pride bubbling up within me and like coming out through every pore. And I just let myself feel that at the time, and I enjoyed it. And afterwards I thought, what is this powerful emotion I'm feeling because somebody else did something good? And that's a lot of my confusion. I realize, talking about my daughter, I have a lot of skin in this game. But it's still a little confusing to me. And I suspect that, spam mail, sorry. I suspect that most parents feel their most proud moments when their children do something that delights them. Now, this is a really fortunate time for this particular service to be coming up, in spite of the fact I've been trying to win this event for years. And the reason is where I am in my life. About a month ago, my wife and I helped my daughter get settled into her dorm room in Oregon. And a couple of months before that, I retired from my job. So in the space of 3 months, less than 3 months, I went from being a harried, overextended working woman with a child in my home to being a retired empty nester. And the opening that this gives me to design the life that I want going forward is exhilarating, and it's also terrifying. And so I'm asking myself a lot of questions. I'm asking myself, what makes me proud? How much of my identity was tied up in my job and in raising my daughter? How much structure do I need to build into my life to make sure that I spend my days wisely? And what are the most important values that I want to carry forward with me into this new phase of my life? So I don't have any of this figured out yet, but I do know, this makes me feel like I'm still a board member giving the call for the offering, sorry. I do know that it's true that this congregation is helping me to figure it out. And it's also true that this beloved congregation will be a huge part of this life I build for myself, which I know I will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Brett. Pride goeth before a fall. That is just false pride. Pride is the deadliest of the deadly 7 deadly sins. Black pride, civic pride, pride in my work, protecting my pride. Proud of them, proud of her, proud of him, proud of you, proud of me. What an interesting topic Sharon gave us in this Bid for Love service when she asked us to focus on the service in the ways that we struggle with the idea of pride today. The messages that we have in our culture are mixed in different ways, and they emerge in the ways that we talked about in our Time for All Ages, as that good kind of good feeling, proud feeling, and then that kind of vanity, prideful feeling that we can also feel. As someone who was raised outside of organized religion, it's always interesting to me how much of that traditional Christian mainstream, even the oppressive parts, filtered into my life somehow, even though I never had any formal schooling in it, in any kind of religious instruction as a child. I knew as a very young child that pride was something you should avoid, if possible. And yet, it has also been true that as I've seen growing understanding of the sense of pride that Rodney talked about in his call to worship, that there are also ways that we have recognized over these decades that it is actually important for us to hold some forms of being proud, and that's important. I think it's captured in that sense of the pride events that we have to celebrate our LGBTQI siblings each year. And in his Seven Deadly Sins podcast, Stephen Fry, the author and podcaster and actor, calls this use of the word a metonym, because it's so true, using pride in that sense. It's a metonym. It's not just a synonym, it's a metonym, he says. Now, in a sermon preached when he became the head of the UU Service Committee, my colleague William Schultz commented, the seven deadly sins were first systematized in 590 by Pope Gregory, as Rodney alluded to, and now are part of the Catholic Catechism. I bet, he said, that unless you're an ex-Catholic or were very attentive and guilt-ridden by tendency in catechism class, most of you cannot name the seven deadly sins. In fact, if I give you a hint, you might come up with one of them. It is associated with frequent church going. And then he says, bless you, bingo, you've got it, lust. Though, come to think of it, he says, those of you who thought that the sin I was thinking of was low blood pressure may not be off the mark, because if you have low blood pressure, you may be feeling sloth. That's another one. And then there's wrath and greed and pride and envy and gluttony. The seven deadly sins, he said, the early Christian church's roadmap to hell. He goes on then for the rest of his address to talk about the seventh and most deadly as being pride. And that's something that the writer and Christian apologist C.S. Lewis agrees with, and as far as pride is concerned. He wrote, there is one vice of which, and I'm going to use the language of his time, though it is not inclusive, there is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which every person in the world loathes when seen in someone else, and of which hardly any people, except Christians, ever imagine that they are guilty of themselves. There is no fault which makes a person more unpopular, and no fault with which we are unconscious of in ourselves, and the more we have it in ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. According to Christian teachers, this essential vice, this utmost evil, is pride. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, all of that are merely flea bites in comparison. It was, though, through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. Well, there you go. That's the dark side of Narnia, indeed. And there does seem to be a lot of consensus, as I've researched this over the last weeks, that not only is pride a sin, it's one of the deadliest for those who think in those manners. And as Stephen Pride put it, if the seven deadlies are the banana peels of life, sure to make you slip into more and more mess and unholiness, then pride, as he puts it, is the most banana-ish, banana peel-ish of all of them. If you think about it, there's egoism and there's egotism, and what a difference a little tea makes. Yet our world is ravaged by it in so many ways. And when you're thinking about the world through the lens of pride, as I have been these last weeks, you really realize this is something we need to figure out. The synonyms for pride show our very conflicted relationship to it: vanity, arrogance, snobbery, self-importance. And more recently, as Fry pointed out, we're more likely to also use other synonyms as we move away from a more theological, traditional understanding towards a more psychological one: self-love, affirmation, self-respect. Yet what our world is seeing today is excesses, perhaps, of the former kinds of synonyms, and not so much the latter. So let's look a little bit about where this comes from. In the Jewish tradition, in the scripture of Micah, we are told that to love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with our God is what we should aspire to do. And Rabbi Michael Dolgan says that it's about our will and our limits when we think about pride, the difference between the tree of knowledge of good and bad and the tree of life, which are both found in Genesis. He says they represent two basic issues in human life: our mortality and the limits in our knowledge. Many cultural and religious perspectives, he says, assert that wrestling with mortality defines the entire human experience. But the Torah story about the birth of humanity focuses not only on our struggle with mortality, but also on the limits of what we can know. In the Islamic tradition, they differentiate between the kind of pride that's rooted in arrogance and the humility that allows one to not only realize one's own limits before God, but also to realize one's limits in oneself. So perhaps, for some, the litmus test for which kind of pride we're experiencing has to do with whether it makes us feel like we know everything or just whether we're celebrating what we do know. That's something to think about. Fry points out that Aristotle was a great fan of a certain kind of pride, and that the Greek word for pride translates as greatness of the soul, which was my favorite definition that I encountered in preparing for this sermon. So perhaps the pride that we can actually be proud of is determined by the expansiveness of our motivation behind our actions and our interpretations. Do I do this for my own glorification and the uplifting, or for the uplifting of something larger? Perhaps world leaders sense this contradiction when they try to cast their personal ambitions in a cloak of betterment for a nation. In the Nyingma school of Buddhism, they differentiate between divine pride and delusional pride, and this is what actually the one that stuck with me as I looked at this. They said that divine pride or delusional pride is arrogance, the conceited attitude of superiority based in the belief in the fact that life is not transitory, that is the basis for disrespecting others and for the reoccurrence of suffering. That is where we see the world through the lens only of the I, or a my, and the idea that we are a totally separate, permanent self. So the mundane or delusional pride is linked to the delusional or unwholesome view in this form of Buddhism of separateness and permanence. Now, I was reading this particular article in Tricycle Magazine, which is a Buddhist magazine, when the NPR headlines about the January 6th hearings started coming up on my phone. And it struck me that this lack of understanding about our interdependence is rife in the motivations behind what happened that day. And this week, when we were forced once again to see those events, the slippery slope of delusional pride is very, very clear to us. One delusion, as these events make clear, is to overvalue yourself, but another is to undervalue yourself. This was the reason for Langston Hughes' I'm Black and I'm Proud, which has evolved into Black Lives Matter and other movements. It's the metonym of gay pride. And Fry points out that it is also behind the Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, right? It is, Fry points out, reasons abound behind why a society that was hierarchical and predominantly paternalistic and based on fulfilling the desires of a very few people at the top would want to restrict how much people felt pride. For pride is tied to a sense of autonomy and also a freedom from the opinions of others at some level. And in some societies, that tie to the opinions of others is an important binding element. So perhaps it is divine pride when an act allows a person to take their rightful place, to let their own little light shine, not underneath anyone else, not above anyone else, but just right alongside the others. Some prideful acts bring people together, and others we know drive them further apart. An achievement by a member of the community might inspire others in the same way that claiming an identity might. A competitive kind of pride keeps people apart, and a toxic kind of pride can justify many things, even the loss of others' lives, as a way of saving face. Pride driven by arrogance inevitably sets one further apart from others. And national pride, this is an interesting thing that I spent quite a bit of time thinking about, but national pride seems really able to step on that banana peel and slide into other things, towards nationalism for one thing, while civic pride is more likely to just organize a trash pickup. Think about it, it's kind of interesting. If keeping people in their places in a hierarchical society makes pride the worst sin, then perhaps what we need in these times when we're trying to establish, many of us, a more egalitarian world, is a moderated pride which allows all to give their gifts, which is the motivation for many. And as Stephen Fry says, who are we to call this sinful? In today's world, we need all the little lights. We need to survive the fuss and mess of these days, and we need to take time to affirm ourselves and also to encourage others to do the same. We also need to be wary of the excesses of ego which endanger all of us on this planet. We need that greatness of soul, I believe, and we cannot afford the costs of more delusional pride that is so rending the world and its citizens. So let us, together, affirm that we will let our lights shine, and that we will also, together in community, regulate among our own hearts those places where vanity seeps in. So may it be.
We're going to ask you to rise and body your spirit. Let's join in singing our closing song, For All That Is Our Life.
And before I read the words of our benediction and we extinguish our chalice, I want to remind you that our middle schoolers would love to see you before you come back to participate in our congregational forum at noon. These are the words of Samira Wiley. I want to make sure that any young person or anyone who really looks up to me sees a glimpse of how I am as a person, that they see no shame, that they see pride, and that I'm truly unabashed about the person that I am. As we extinguish our chalice, let us take its light out into this world, and let us give it to one other person this week.